Good morning, and welcome to the last day of the 5th International Conference on Natural Resources and Sustainable Environmental Management. Today, we will be having 5 consecutive sessions. In the first 4 sessions, we will be hosting valuable scientists from all over the world to deliver their presentations. The final session today will be the closure of the conference with participation of distinguished scientists, honorable statesmen, and all the dear ones who have participated and contributed during the conference. In the first session of the final day of NRSEM 2021, we are hosting Professor Necati Ağaralioğlu from Antalya Bilim University, Turkey, Professor ZINET SELMIN BURAK from the Institute of Marine Sciences and Management, Istanbul University, Turkey, Professor Josip Gregac from Boskovic Institute, Zagreb, Croatia, Professor MAHNAZ GÜMRÜKÇÜODLU YIİT from Sakarya University, Turkey, and finally Professor Senem Tekse Başaran from Medeniyet University, Turkey. Welcome, professors. As our first guest, I would like to invite Professor Necati Ağaralioğlu to deliver his presentation.
Good morning. I want to share my presentation.
Good morning, Professor.
Okay. My presentation title is Project Transferring Water from Turkey to Cyprus Island. Actually, I want to summarize the water resources potential in the whole Cyprus Island. I think my presentation will be published, but I want to summarize some of the critical points. Sorry. As you see, the Cyprus Island, the map of the Cyprus Island, here, Turkey, Syria, Israel, Lebanon, Cyprus, Greece, and some other countries. Climate and water resources in Cyprus Island. It has had a dry summer from mid-May to mid-September, and a rainy climate from November.
Professor, apologize for the interruption.
Precipitation is about 500 millimeters. The lowest value of 182 millimeters was observed in 1972-73, and the highest of 759 millimeters occurred in 1968 and 1969.
Professor,
yeah.
Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah, please.
May I kindly ask you to present your slides? We cannot see your PowerPoint presentation.
Oh, I want to send this presentation to you previously. What is the problem now?
Do we have your presentation?
Yeah.
If you want, Professor, you can send it to us and I can share my screen. And if you let me know when to skip slides, I'll skip the slides for you.
Okay. Anyway, I want to summarize our presentation, my presentation, and so maybe we discuss later on.
Okay, of course, Professor.
Okay.
We are listening to you.
Okay, thank you very much. The total yearly average precipitation is about 500 millimeters. A low value of 182 millimeters was observed, and something like that. And so Cyprus can be divided in 4 main climatic regions, as seen in table and figure. So one of them is the Troodos mountain range. The other is the slope of the Troodos mountain. And the third one, the Mesaria plain or Mesaria Ovası, and the coastal areas, including the Beşparmak Dağları or Pentadactylos mountain. So, for 4 regions, we have a table. We can see the annual precipitation for each region, annual evaporation, aridity index, and classification. Aridity index, for instance, for Troodos mountain is 0.54, and the slope of Troodos 0.30, and Mesaria plain is 0.18, and Beşparmak Dağları is 0.23, as first one is dry subsummit, the second one is semi-arid, and arid, and semi-arid, and so on. The overall average aridity index is 0.295, as classified as a semi-arid region. So aridity can be known as the definition as the ratio between mean annual precipitation and mean annual evapotranspiration, calculated but with Penman formula. And so you see the classification of the aridity index, and hyper-arid, arid, and semi-arid, and dry, sub-humid, and humid, and so on. You see the precipitation map in Cyprus, total Cyprus, and you see the Beşparmak Dağları and the Mesaria plain and the mountains, Troodos mountains, and so on. Karpas, this part is also Karpas. So, water resources in Cyprus Island, the most of the stream originated from the Troodos mountains, and so there are many small rivers. You see the rivers here in this map, figure 3. Maybe we will continue. What is the surface runoff for each hydrologic region? And there is a table 3. The name in Turkish, Erenköy, Güzelyurt, İrne, Karpas, Mesaria, and Güneydoğu, Mesaria, Larnaca, Limassol. As you see, the minimum average rainfall is in Güneydoğu, Mesaria. And surface runoff is also the lowest in this part. Groundwater recharge is also summarized in another table, table 4. And so you see the Güneydoğu Mesaria has the lowest total groundwater discharge. Water development works in southern Cyprus There are many dams in southern Cyprus, and so they store the water, surface water, and then they want to use. You see the major water works on southern Cyprus in figure 4. This map is very interesting. There are many studies in southern Cyprus related to water resources development. Effects of climate change in water resources in Cyprus. There are some studies related to effects of climate change on water resources, especially in northern Cyprus. Southern Cyprus, there are some standard precipitation evaporation indexes analysis. You see the map here. For instance, Kuris Dam is the biggest one, and Kitty Dam and Asprekomos Dam and some other things in figure 5. There are some studies related to climate change adaptation in Cyprus, and maybe we can summarize the methods in the areas of robotics and internal of things and the remote sensing as concentrated in southern Cyprus region. Another subtitle is Transferring Water from Turkey to Cyprus Island. You see the northern parts, including Girne, Magosa, and some of Lefkosia. There are 6 provinces in Cyprus Island and so on. Northern Cyprus, like most other islands, has problems of freshwater storage, and so there are many problems related to this one. Climate condition and natural resources in northern Cyprus. Climate condition, you see the climate condition in figure 7. You see the precipitation depth per month and temperature in centigrade per month, and so this temperatures is high in August, and on the other hand, precipitation is the lowest also in August. There are some average values in northern Cyprus. Average temperature during a year is 24 centigrade degree, and precipitation 734 millimeters. Land and water resources. In this part, there are some studies, especially related to water resources potential in northern Cyprus. There are some literature related to this one, and so on. And there is a big project related to water supply in Cyprus. Preliminary investigation for the project. It includes some parts, and so the Turkish mainland to northern coast of Cyprus was constructed a pipeline. So the pipeline diameter will be 160 millimeters, and the length of the pipeline will be approximately 80 kilometers. They used a polyethylene pipe, high-density polyethylene pipe. So maybe we consider this project in 5 blocks, as you see, one of them landfall Turkey, nearshore Turkey, offshore Turkey, nearshore Cyprus, landfall Cyprus, and so on. There are water depth for each one, line length, and seawater density, seawater salinity, seawater temperature, biofouling, and some maximum values of the tidal variation. We summarize this as that maybe someone can be used. The project started to prepare on 27 May 1998, and it was completed in 2015. I prepared a book related to this project. Maybe some of you know about this one. Anyway, there are three parts: Turkey parts, and Cyprus parts, and offshore parts. This is the profile of the project. You see the distance, 80 kilometers. There are some parts in this one. There is a dam in Turkey parts, and Alaköprü Dam, and another dam in Cyprus is Keçitköy Dam. You see the plan shape. Alaköprü Dam, Keçitköy Dam, and the cross-section line about 80 kilometers, sea cross-section pipeline. There is also some transmission lines in Turkish parts and in Cyprus parts. And so you see the Alaköprü Dam in Turkey in figure 10, and the transmission line at 23 kilometers length. Anamur balancing room. There is an Anamur balancing room here. This is in the plan Alaköprü Dam, and this is the Anamur balancing room. And so these parts is transmission line in part of the Turkey. There are some battery limits. One of them in the Turkish landfall, you see the offshore contractor and onshore constructor and offshore constructor, zone 1, zone 2, and this is the profile of this figure as schematic figure. Sea cross-section structure of the project, you see the street cross-section schematically, and pipe connection, and Y part is this one. Flotation tank is this one, and so rope is this one, and anchorage is this one. You see the floating tank, rope, and anchorage in schematic figure is figure 14. The depth of the maximum depth is 1,430 meters. And so there are some technical figures here and so. Northern Cyprus part land constructions of the project is Güzelhane pumping station, transmission line, and some other parts. Storage is Keçitköy Dam in Keçitköy, pumping station, Keçitköy pumping station, and drinking water distribution lines in northern Cyprus is about 499 kilometers. You see the Geçitkale Dam. you see the water distribution system in northern Cyprus. You see this part and this part and this part to Girne region, to Mesuria, and so Nagaso, so Karpas parts and different color water distribution systems. Water resources potential in the northern Cyprus, and there are some studies, but we need more water for northern Cyprus. We have to consider this one. And we need some studies. Uneven water resources in northern Cyprus, we have to consider this one. And overuse of groundwater, we have to consider this one. And maybe next studies, water losses in the region are very high. Nereden bakıyorsun? Beni görünmüyor mu?
Professor, we can see you.
You can, It's okay?
It's okay.
Okay, thank you very much. And so we have to consider water losses in the region because this is very high, and reuse of some wastewaters, and use alternative water production, such as by desalination, and inability to provide necessary and sufficient water, sufficient energy in the management of the water. And finally, we have to consider central and local governments should be interested in such water projects. As a conclusion, we summarize the previous parts in this paragraphs, and so we have some recommendations, especially related to northern Cyprus water resources. And estimation of the future population with 15 years is very interesting because we have to estimate the drinking water and the agricultural water needs. Estimation of the climate change with 50 years. Estimation of the amount, average hydrological cycle components of normal, dry, and wet years. An estimation of drainage basin coverage of northern Cyprus by different land use as agricultural and natural and artificial lands, and determine the general hydrological data, especially area of the region, precipitation, volume of precipitation, evapotranspiration, percolation, surface runoff, and theoretical water potential as annual average values of the normal year. Prediction of the withdrawals from surface and groundwater, underground water, and overall water use, agricultural, domestic, and livestock. Determination of total and irrigated agricultural areas. Determine dams and their capacities in the northern Cyprus, and water potential of major hydrogeological units of northern Cyprus. Current studies of wastewater treatment in northern Cyprus for return use. And as a conclusion, I want to say water resource management, especially in northern Cyprus, must be considered as soon as possible, depending on the population growth and the climate change. Thank you very much for your listening. There are some, okay.
Thank you very much, Professor Necati Ağaralioğlu, for the valuable presentation.
Okay.
Okay, as our next guest, I would like to invite Professor ZINET Selmin BURAK from Institute of Marine Sciences and Management, Istanbul University, Turkey. Professor BURAK.
Thank you. I'll share the screen now. Share screen. Is that okay?
We cannot see your screen yet, Professor.
And now? Now can you see?
No, we cannot. If you click on the bottom of your screen, there's a share button.
Yeah, but I clicked on already.
And then if you choose the window selection,
I have to restart now. Yes. I share the screen. My PowerPoint presentation is open, and I share the screen. So,
unfortunately, we cannot see, Professor. May I kindly ask you to close the program, your PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
And once you're on live with us, reopen the program, reopen your presentation.
Okay.
And then when you choose share, and then instead of entire screen, you select window, then the PowerPoint presentation will be available.
I select window. What do you mean by I select window? I select window, yes. It is selected. Yeah. Now can you see? No.
No, unfortunately, we cannot.
Oh. Okay. So I will close the window, you see? What should I do?
If you can close the PowerPoint presentation,
okay, I
the
close.
PPT file.
Okay, I closed it. Okay.
And then, now reopen it.
Okay, I reopen it. Okay, I reopened it. Okay. Then I share, is that right?
Yes, that is true.
Okay, I share. I can't share. Why? Should I sign up somewhere? No.
No, there is no need to sign up.
Okay, okay. I can't share the screen. Yeah, here. No, I can't.
Professor?
Yeah.
Is it possible for you to continue without sharing your slides?
Okay, but how?
Or if you would like, I can take our next guest, and on the background we try to solve the problem.
Okay, okay. So do you want me to share the screen? What should I do now?
If you would like, I want to take our next guest to live broadcast, and in the background we try to solve the problem.
Okay. Do you want me to send you? Sorry. Do you want me to send you the whole lot of PowerPoint?
Yes, it's an option. You can send your PowerPoint presentation to me, and I'll share my screen.
To Hüseyin, Professor Hüseyin Gökçekuş, is that right?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay. I will do that, and we'll see why it doesn't work. Okay, because everything is fine, so I don't understand why is it so. Okay, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor ZINET. Okay, until we solve the problem with Professor ZINET's presentation problem, now I would like to invite Professor Josip Gregac from Boskovic Institute, Zagreb, Croatia. Professor, you ready?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Hello, Professor. Welcome.
Good morning, Dr. Alas, and good morning to everybody online. Well, I am actually replacing Dr. Jasmina OBHOĐAŠ in delivering this presentation, and we announced it obviously early on. And I must admit that I'm really overjoyed that I have the opportunity to present this research at such a renowned conference. And I will continue with the presentation now. You can see it. Is everything okay?
Yes, we can see your screen perfectly.
Great, thank you. Well, first of all, I have to thank my mentor, Dr. Jasmina OBHOĐAŠ, who left this lecture to me, and to Professor Tarzan Legovic for the support and help in preparing this presentation, and above all to the organizing committee that included this lecture in the conference program. Well, this research
Professor Gregac,
Yes, sorry.
Apologize for interrupting, Professor. May I kindly ask you to make your screen full screen?
I think that I have done it, but it doesn't work. Is it okay now?
No, Professor.
Okay.
If you can make your slides full screen and then click on share, it will work.
Yes, I did do that, and because I just have the option to stop sharing, not to.
Mm-hmm. You can stop sharing and then reshare your.
Okay, I will
screen.
try that. We'll try that. Is it visible now? No? Still the same?
No. Wait a second. It's still not full screen, but if you would like, on the bottom right corner of your screen,
Okay.
there's a button called Read View. If you can click on the Read View, then your screen will be full screen.
You said on the bottom right.
On the bottom right corner of your screen, in the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, let's start resharing and now. Okay, just a second. I will share it again and start that. Is it okay now? Yeah.
It's okay, Professor. Perfectly fine. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for the help. Well, I started talking that this work is a result of cooperation of between civil sector and scientific institution, between Association BURAK, which is the national operator for the Blue Flag program in Croatia, and the Ruđer Bošković Institute. Research has been done with two main goals. First goal is to compare the results of copper, zinc, arsenic, and lead concentrations in sediments taken from Croatian blue flag marinas after 15 years period, and to evaluate environmental measures which were undertaken in that period of time. And the second goal was to define sediment standards for selected heavy metals in order to protect marinas' environment from excessive pollution. The basis for this research is the Atlas of Sediments of Croatian Coastal Region and Islands of the Adriatic Sea that was published in 2010. And during the screening of the Eastern Adriatic coastal sediments concerning elements abundance from 2005 to 2010 for the purpose of development of Croatian Atlas of Sediment, it has been noted that sediments in marinas located along the Croatian coast contain significantly increased concentrations of copper, zinc, arsenic, and lead compared to sediments from pristine marine environment. This was probably or most certainly been related to the boat paints that were used to prevent boat hulls from fouling. 15 years later, to assess the environmental protection measures advised to blue flag marina managers, we took sediment samples in the same marinas in the areas of Marina Pier and Marina Service Zone and compared those results. You ask yourself why blue flag, and I think I partly already answered because I work as a national operator of that program in Croatia, so thus have the opportunity to influence on marinas with the blue flag and their activity, and have the access to taking samples in those marinas. As national operator for blue flag program in Croatia, we were looking for the ways to point out to marina managers the threats to the marine environment, the marine water and the sediments caused by uncontrolled use of anti-fouling paints. And with this research, we have shown that by introducing advised protective measures, these threats can be reduced. Blue Flag program promotes sustainable development in marine areas by challenging local authorities and marine managers to achieve higher standards in 4 categories: in water quality, environmental management, environmental education, and safety through 33 categories. A criterion that actually prompts us to do this research is criterion number 18, which says that from both repairing and washing areas, no pollution must enter the sewage system, marina land and marina water, or the natural surroundings, and that there must be collection filters or equivalent system to that from both repairing and washing areas to prevent hazardous substances from entering the sewage system and the marine land and water. We used methods, or we have studied the samples and sediments from selected 14 Croatian blue flag Adriatic marinas to evaluate strengths in copper, zinc, arsenic, and lead concentration in a period of 15 years. In that period, 13 out of 14 marinas have installed physical-chemical wastewater treatment plants in different period of these 15 years. And the starting point for, as I mentioned already, for comparison of elemental concentration with sediment were sediment geochemical maps from the Croatian Atlas of Sediments that was developed for coastal sediment screening purposes, and also which has included the screening of Croatian marinas. In that atlas, there were more than 700 sediment samples analyzed for 18 different elements. Among them have been copper, zinc, arsen, and lead. And concentration of selected elements were measured by the tube excited energy dispersive X-rays fluorescence, so-called EDXRF, with relative measurement errors for copper of 20.5%, zinc 5.1%, arsen 11.1%, and lead 20.5%. The same preparation and analytical technique were used in the Atlas, Croatian Atlas of Sediments. Therefore, the results were comparable, and the comparison of those results have been feasible. After doing this research or analysis, we have found out that 50% of evaluated marinas have shown improvement due to installation of the wastewater treatment plants, and another 20% of analyzed marinas retained a good environmental status, although 30% of evaluated marinas have shown deterioration of the environmental quality despite they installed wastewater treatment plant. I will now briefly go through results for each of analyzed marinas, and you will notice that those marinas that showed deterioration of the environment quality are marked in red in the next slide. First of analyzed marina is on the far northwest Croatian coast in Peninsula of Istria. It's ACI Marina Umag, which has installed wastewater treatment plant in 2014. And despite that, it showed deterioration of almost all analyzed categories due to increased number of boats in marina, or marine managers did not use wastewater treatment plant properly. Only little improvement that we saw is in zinc and lead concentrations in service zone. Second marina, also red one, also on Istrian Peninsula, is Marina Parentium, which have installed wastewater treatment plant in 2005, and that was before the samples for Croatian Atlas of sediments were taken. So deterioration in all concentrations in service area is a result of increased number of boats in the marina. However, concentrations in the pier zone, with the exception of copper, have actually decreased. So we conclude that wastewater treatment plant most certainly had some degree of influence or impact on the concentrations. Next marina on the Istrian Peninsula is Technomont Varida Veruda, which has wastewater treatment plant installed in 2009, and almost all concentrations have significantly decreased, except copper and zinc concentration in pier area, which is the result of increased use of anti-fouling paints for the boats. Next neighboring marina is Marina Pomer, also situated in the Pula region in Istrian Peninsula. And that marina has a wastewater treatment plant installed in 2014. Unfortunately, in that marina, samples were taken only from one of the piers, because marina have a sloped concrete platform in the service zone from which the sediments are constantly washed off to greater depth, from which we are not able to take the sample, unfortunately. But the results in pier area that we took the samples have shown that all elements concentrations have retained the good environmental status. Next red marina is ACI Marina Opatia, which has a wastewater treatment plant in 2013. And despite that, it had a large increase of concentration of copper and zinc in the service zone. But on the other hand, it had significant decrease in all other elements concentration. And reason for that should be definitely additionally re-examined. And service zone should be subjected to some level of remediation with a reasonable period of time, and additional environmental protection measures should be developed for concentration of copper and zinc. Next analyzed marina located on the island of Krk is Marina Punat, that had a wastewater treatment plant installed in 2002 before samples for Atlas of sediments were taken, and wastewater treatment plant was functional until 2010, when the service zone has been relocated. In 2014, another wastewater treatment plant was installed in this new service area that was organized on the north part of the marina. And the results have showed that almost all concentrations have significantly decreased, except for the arsenic and lead concentration in service area, which has increased a lot. And it is probably due to the relocation of the service zone, parallel with the misuse of wastewater treatment plant. Next marina located on the island of Ceres is ATSI Marina Ceres, and it has a wastewater treatment plant installed in 2008, and almost all concentration have a significant decrease except for the copper and zinc concentration in the pier area, which is the result of increased use of copper and zinc-based anti-fouling paints. Next marina located on the island of Rab is ATSI Marina Supetarska Draga, which has the wastewater treatment plant installed in 2011, and all concentration have significantly decreased in the service zone. But at the same time, all concentration increased in the pier area. Still, when comparing it to prime result, all concentration retained a good environmental status. Also, another marina located on the island of Rab is ATSI Marina Rab, which is the only analyzed marina with no wastewater treatment plant installed, although they have a service zone. So, in spite that, concentration remained approximately the same through all 15 analyzed years, with small increases or decreases for some of the elements, but still all concentrations retained good environmental status. First marina analyzed in Dalmatia is ATSI Marina Shimune, located on island of Pag, and that is one of the bad marina, which has which wastewater treatment plant installed in 2014. And this marina actually showed us the worst result and deterioration in virtually all analyzed categories and all analyzed elements, due to probably increase of both in marina, or marine manager didn't use wastewater treatment plant properly, or actually probably didn't use it at all, according to results that we have. Marina located in central Dalmatia is Marina Dalmatia, that was analyzed, and that marina have installed wastewater treatment plant in 2010. And almost all concentrations have significantly decreased, except for the copper and zinc concentration in service area, which is probably the result of excessive use of copper and zinc anti-fouling paints. The results have shown that all elements and concentration have actually retained a good environmental status. Another marina located in Central Dalmatia, obviously our champion in all collected results, is ATSI Marina YIÐIT, that installed wastewater treatment plant in 2009. And the best results, as I said, were measured in this marina. It had actually a dramatical decrease in all concentration after installation of wastewater treatment plant, except for the concentration of zinc in pier area, which is most definitely the result of decreased use of zinc-based anti-fouling paints. Another marina in the Central Dalmatia is Marina Frapa, which has a wastewater treatment plant installed in 2010. Unfortunately, samples were taken only from the service area because the seabed in the pier zone is too deep for bed grab sample that we used for the sampling. And the results that we have for the service area showed decrease in all element concentration. And the last marina that we analyzed, located on the far southeast of the Croatian Adriatic coast, is ATSI Marina Dubrovnik, which has the wastewater treatment plant installed in 2012. And also, unfortunately, samples were taken only from service area due to rocky bottom in the pier area, and the results from service zone show decrease in all element concentration after wastewater treatment plant was installed. So The analysis and the comparison were done with the purpose to assess effectiveness of the environmental protective measures, because introduced into marina to decrease harmful contamination level in the water column and consequently in the sediments, because those Eastern Adriatic marinas were recognized as hotspots for copper, zinc, arsenic, and lead. This was actually necessary for proposing future strategies and actions to marine managers, which will ensure that levels of analyzed contaminants continue to decrease in the future. The purpose of the study, categories of sediment samples were actually determined from Croatian Atlas of Sediments that I already mentioned by their location of collection. First group is pristine sediments, which samples were taken from bays and beach areas. Second one is traces of contamination, which samples were taken in settlements, ports, marina, and marina pier areas. Third category is contaminated and highly contaminated sediments, which samples were taken from the areas of service zone in marinas. And the last category is other samples that were taken in estuaries, usually in brackish water and in peloids. These environments were assessed in order to obtain a quick overview of the range of concentration in relation to associated human activity. And the final goal was to determine acceptable levels of contamination with respect to ongoing activities, human activities, of course. For this purpose, sediments were divided into 4 classes based on Portuguese sediment quality guidelines for dredge material, as the reported background levels are similar to those measured in the Adriatic Sea. And finally, class 2, traces of contamination in sediments, is determined as the targeted sediment quality value. As I said, sediments were divided into those 4 classes, considering background or natural concentrations and concentration obtained from environmental categories showing different levels of environmental degradation. According to that, first class that we identified is pristine sediments, where concentrations, the upper limit of concentration is calculated as the mean value of data collected for bays and beaches, increased by 3 standard deviation. Second class is sediments with traces of contamination, which are allowed to be disposed into seawater without any monitoring. And the upper limit for that category was calculated as 95th percentile of data collection for the settlements, ports, and marina pier areas. Third class contains contaminated material, which disposals into seawater is allowed with mandatory monitoring. The upper limit for that category is derived as the maximum value for arsenic and lead of the whole data set, and as the 75th percentile of data collection for marina service area for copper and zinc. And finally, class 4 that was proposed is highly contaminated material, which is not allowed for disposal in the seawater, and values exceeding the upper limit derived from the category 3 is the upper limit, is the lower limit for that category. So you can see here the values that were calculated according to what I said right now. Thus, following our proposal, class 2 traces of contaminated, as I said, is determined as the target sediment quality for the marinas, and the appropriate protective measures, including regular monitoring, might be imposed by the regulators in order to maintain that class 2 and to prevent future increase of pollution. Location with category 3 status may be attained in only temporarily and on very limited area of marina service zones. The prescription of protection measures and monitoring on a yearly basis would be mandatory for that category. And the highly contaminated areas classified into category 4, measured in this research for copper in service areas of Atsimarina Umag and Atsimarina Opatia, and for zinc in service areas of Atsimarina Opatia and Marina Parentium, should definitely be subjected to some levels of remediation with the reasonable period of time, and additional environmental protection measures should be developed. Also, it should have seasonal monitoring, which should be mandatory. As I already mentioned, the development of our proposed marine sediment standards as a model used Portuguese sediment quality guidelines for dredge material, as the reported background levels are similar to those measured in the Adriatic Sea. The difference is that our proposal is primarily developed to prevent the further trend of significant environmental deterioration in marinas, while the Portuguese sediment quality guidelines are developed for dredge material disposal. But targeted values of category 2 with traces of contamination where sediments are allowed to dispose at sea with no monitoring correspond in both guidelines, Portuguese and our proposal. And as slowly my time is running out, I will stop here and finally conclude main thing that we concluded in this research. First thing is that 50% of evaluated marinas have shown improvement due to installation of wastewater treatment plants that were actually presented to marina managers. And another 20% retained good sediment quality status. Although 30% of evaluated marinas have shown deterioration of the environmental quality despite installation of wastewater treatment plant. But nevertheless, the majority of analyzed marinas succeed to remain in or to reach the class 2 with respect of metals in sediments from service zones and piers. That was the targeted values for acceptable concentrations. The highly contaminated areas that are classified in category 4, measures for zinc and copper in service areas of 3 analyzed marinas, should be subjected to some level of remediation within a reasonable period of time, and additional environmental protection measures should be actually developed. And of course, the results of this study will be shared with the marine managers, and additional strategies and actions will be proposed that will ensure that levels of copper, zinc, arsenic, and lead will actually decrease even further in the future. And I will stop there. I will thank you for your attention, for your time. And if there are any questions, I will be glad to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor GÜMRÜKÇÜODLU, for the very valuable presentation. And we are very pleased to have you here with us.
Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to invite Professors ZINET, SELMIN, BURAK. Hello, Professor. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we had some technical problems.
Again.
We will. No. I think we'll be able to solve it.
Okay.
Unfortunately, such technical problems may occur during live sessions like this.
Yes.
So, if you would like, now I will share my screen.
Okay.
And your presentation will be on the session. Okay. And if you let me know when to skip the slides, I'll skip the slides for you.
Can I again try again? No. Okay, you are on the screen. Okay. Okay, so we start then.
Yes, we are ready when you are.
Okay, I am. You can skip. Okay, I will say the subject and the title of my presentation. Can you backward? Yeah, water-related risks in the megacity Istanbul. What are the need for planning an optimal portfolio? Because we'll see the outlines. Next, please. We all know it's a stereotype statement maybe, but it's better to remind it. World's water resources and hydrologic cycle, it's a thing that we must aware of that. We don't have ever providing, ever supplying sources. So this is for Istanbul province, because the megacity Istanbul extends on both sides of the center, and the demographic features and urbanization in Istanbul presents the most challenging situation. So for that, we need to get prepared for a water portfolio composed of water resources, water transfers, what is the potential, and in that case, how can we hedge water supply? So I'll summarize all these issues and put forward the most important or the challenges. Next slide, please. So this is to remind us in our watery planet, we have this as freshwater resources. Next slide, please. And in this is we see in detail this planet. Our freshwater resources is only limited to 0.3%. The resources that we can reach possibly technically and economically. The remaining being the seawater. Okay, next slide, please. Can we put the slide a bit larger, please? Or can I do it? Okay. Okay, that's great. But now I can't see. I can't see the, okay. Okay. Can we shift this? No, we can't. Okay. Again, this is to remind us what is the hydrologic cycle on land, but we can shift to the next slide. Yeah, it's better when you shift to the left-hand side, please. Okay, then I can see. Okay, okay. So I will skip this slide, but just one. Okay, I want to remind again that Istanbul has long been facing population problems as being a very attractive city since the Byzantine period. We can see on the top on right hand side the Valence Aqueduct, which is placed in the middle of the city. And starting from 16th century, due to the population, I would say, the first signals of water scarcity started. And then the prestigious monuments, water monuments, have been designed and constructed. For instance, architect Sinan constructed on the 16th century, as you can see on the screen, the two aqueducts to convey water from outside the center of Istanbul at that time, which is no more outside Istanbul, which is in the city, because the city keeps extending to the north, to the south, to the east, and to the west. Next, please. Here we can see how Istanbul lies on both sides of the Asian and European continents, extending from the Marmara Sea to the Black Sea on both sides of the Istanbul Straits, seen on the screen. And in the little writing, you will see how Istanbul is supplied with water from both sides of Istanbul, including the water resources placed in the city itself. We'll come to that in the later slides. Next, please. So in this slide, we can see the watershed located in Istanbul, and also two main watersheds that we used and located outside Istanbul. The one is to the west, called Stranca Creeks, located on the Thrace, and to the east, this is the largest watershed at this moment where we are providing water, transferring water to Istanbul. This is located at 200 kilometers from Istanbul. Next slide, please. The total area of Istanbul provincial boundaries lies on almost 5.5 square kilometers, whereas the total service area of Istanbul Water and Wastewater Administration is more than 9 square kilometers, mainly because this includes, as we spoke before, 2 basins situated outside Istanbul. Next, please. So what are the demographic features and the challenges of urbanization? In Istanbul, we keep preparing master plans because water master plans, because once the master plan, one master plan is completed, finalized, then there is an unforeseen event like extension of the city towards unexpected direction, or earthquake, or immigration from neighboring countries, etc. At present, we are dealing with the 3rd master plan, water master plan. Why is it so? We'll see. Because the previous master plan studies carried out for Istanbul have generally been found to have underestimated the growth of Istanbul. The method of approach focused on predicting the population for the province as a whole. This method assumes that the rate of growth is equal across the entire area, since sub-provinces reflect significant discrepancies. We'll see later on with respect to the growth rate, which is due to land use restrictions. If the sub-province is placed in the old city or historical part of the shoreline, it is not possible to extend this location or construct multi-story building. So the growth can be somewhat controlled, whilst developing sub-regions with multi-story buildings are potential areas for increasing growth rate as opposed to the first situation. So rather than considering the population of Istanbul as a single entity, a new method of approach has been adopted for the two latest master plan studies that seek to recognize the individual characteristics of each sub-province in terms of land use development and of population growth. From these individual parts, a whole picture of development is assembled. Next, please. So here we can see the population density in different sub-district, sub-region of Istanbul. As we can see on the slide, it can differ from 150 to almost 152 persons per hectare to the least one being almost 5 persons per hectare. Can you imagine and see the discrepancies between the regions? Next, please. So this graph shows us and proves us the growth rate and the population density in Istanbul. For instance, we can see on the graph low growth, medium growth, high growth, and the statistics of Turkish statistical institutes. In the previous master plan, 3 growth scenarios have been considered in making the population projections. These were based on assuming low, medium, and high rate growth of future development in the region, the rate of development being dependent on the effectiveness of planned restrictions to the present expansion. In this figure, we can see that the realized population growth has reached high growth already in 2020 because the population in Istanbul has exceeded 15 million persons as of today. Next, please. Why I want to share with you this Elmalı Dam, which is the smallest among others. But you can see, although we have regulations for the protection of watershed in Istanbul and even outside Istanbul, if these provide water to Istanbul, but we can see there that all around are populated, although it was not allowed. We were about to lose the dam because of pollution, but afterwards we put it in mid-90s towards 2000. Rehabilitation measures like ozonation, etc., were put into service in order to rehabilitate this watershed. Next, please. The water resources in Istanbul are on the Asian side, Elmalı, Ömerli, Darlık, and on the European side, Büyükçekmece, Ali Beyköy, Sazlıdere, Terkos Maskam. There, it's a mistake there. Sorry for that. Next, please. So we can see on the table the yield, the drainage area, the mean annual rainfall, average runoff coefficient, as well as the reservoir capacity, the gross capacity, debt storage, effective capacity, etc. We have the details of each catchment area and reservoir. Next, please. What are our main water resources? Ömerli and Terkos are the main resource of local water supply. Ömerli on the Asian side and Terkos on the European side. And they are interconnected to smaller reservoirs that act as backup systems. The treatment facilities, water treatment facilities at Büyükçekmece, Ömerli, and Elmalı are adjacent to their source reservoir and draw water directly into the works through short inlet mains. Kağıthane Treatment Works is supplied with water from Terkos and Ali Beyköy through a large raw water transmission main. İkitelli Treatment Plant is supplied from Terkos and Sazlıdere Reservoir, respectively. Next, please. Here we can see the operation of these interconnected reservoirs. The Stranca creeks, composed of three main creeks, Kazandere, Pabuçdere, and Stranca, feed Terkos Dam by gravity. These are conveyed to Terkos Dam. Ali Bey Creek Ali Bey Creek waters is stored in the Ali Bey Dam and then conveyed to Kağıthane treatment system. Terkos Dam water is treated partly on İkitelli treatment system, and also Sazlıdere Creek stored in Sazlıdere Dam, then treated in the İkitelli treatment system. Büyükçekmece has its own dam and treatment system. GUCU and Elmalı Creek, GUCU Creek is stored in Elmalı Dam and treated in respective treatment system. Whereas on the Asian side, the Darlık Creek, Ömerli Creek, Yeşilçay, and Melen River are all conveyed to Ömerli Dam, stored there, and then treated in Ömerli and Cumhuriyet treatment system, respectively. These are mainly transferred water from two outside basin, Yeşilçay and Melen. We'll come to next slide. We will explain all this. Next, please. So as we can see, Istanbul relies on water transfer because there is no perennial water resources in the city itself. This is if I'm not wrong, there are two megacities in the Mediterranean basin. Istanbul is one of the two, the most populated, and a city where we have no really perennial water. Therefore, we have to transfer water to feed this population. But is it the solution? We will see that it's not anymore. In the 1990s, water transfer from adjacent basins was planned as a remedial action to meet the demand of ever-increasing population, as we experienced on the slides. Later on, extensive projects were developed, and at present, water transfer is an essential component of the water supply scheme for Istanbul. Although water transfer from adjacent basins was considered as a remedial action, it looks now as an essential feature of water supply scheme for megacities. We cannot reject that because we need to supply water to population. Next slide, please. So if we have an overview of the water transfer. Water transfer from Stranca creeks to the Terkos Lake was completed in 2000. The implementation of the scheme started in 1995 as an urgent remedial action following the 90 drought. Reservoir was built in 97 and respectively in order to intercept the flow of various creeks of Yıldız Mountains located on the trace. So water transfer from these creeks with an annual safe yield of 130 million cubic meters a year is via gravity flow to the Terkos Lake, which is their recipient. Next, please. The Yeşilçay is another water transfer scheme. I will not tell all the specification, but in the end, we have 145 million cubic meters a year from this Yeşilçay scheme since 2005. Next, please. The MELEN project. This is the most popular project, water project in Turkey. MELEN River is located at 160 kilometers east of Istanbul, with a catchment area of more than 2,000 square kilometers and a yearly average rainfall of 900 millimeters. Very rainy. The project was launched in late 90s and consists of 4 stages, foreseeing transmission mains, a dam, and a general capacity increase with additional transmission mains and pumping station. It's a huge water project with 1,000 million cubic meters a year by 2032. Next slide, please. Now water is transferred from MELEN to Istanbul. But in Istanbul, there are also water potential, as we said, and local water production. But we realized that maybe you witnessed through the media that we have been facing water shortage even this year, and the level in the reservoir was decreased to a drastic level, but afterwards everything was resettled. Why is it due this phenomenon? We can see on the graph, the lower graph shows that runoff levels during the summers of 2007, 2008, and 2009 were close to the average values, but runoff in the winter of 2013 and 2014 was well below the average. Lower monthly average precipitation in summer months has little effect on runoff because we are in the Mediterranean. But lower than usual monthly precipitation in winter leads to much lower runoff. Since the hydrologic cycle in Turkey starts in October, the reservoirs are at their lower levels in October, and droughts in the subsequent months have a drastic effect on water supply. Water transfers are especially crucial in such situation. This effect occurred in 2013 and 2014. This phenomenon is known as winter drought, and it is experienced in Mediterranean countries. Although Istanbul is in a transition zone, it's affected by this as well. Next, please. Next slide, please. Okay. We carried out a study to compute runoff for Istanbul watershed, and using Turk and Thornthwaite formulas, and afterwards we can see on the screen, and afterwards we compared with in situ works by Kadıoğlu and Shen, and we see that all the computed runoff and the runoff measured on site match together. Next slide, please. Then, based on this, using an algorithm, we see that using running this algorithm, considering current water resources and water transfers, imports to Istanbul, water supply is foreseen to fall short after 2060 if the existing water resources are not protected with regard to their safe yield and their quality. Why I'm saying that, we'll come to that next in the next slide, please. Therefore, we need to adopt an integrated perspective and try to hedging water supply, because we cannot rely on water transfer only. Everything has its limits. So Istanbul is extended on both sides of the center, to the east and to the north, and we transferred all water possible to be transferred from both sides of Istanbul, and that's it. But the population is continuing to increase, and water is still scarce. Integrated water resources management and water sensitive city approach is proposed to be implemented with a diversified water portfolio in order to provide sustainability, which have been implemented successfully in other megacities and have hedged supply risks. This is also proposed by the new master plan. Water sensitive cities where the whole settlement is considered as the entire watershed. The interaction with the urban water cycle provides water security, which is essential for economic prosperity through efficient use of diverse available resources. For instance, rainwater, grey water. Water sensitive city is an approach to sustainable water resource management. The concept calls for a city that is a watershed for water supply, provides ecosystem services, and is home to water-sensitive communities. Water-sensitive city planning proposes a complete set of governance approach where land use planning and urban water management are integrated, which has not been possible in Istanbul until now, unfortunately. But starting from now on, I think everybody, including citizens, water managers, land promoters, everybody has to think about it. Please, next slide. So, the water resource potential may be, if accepted, rely on unconventional water resources or manufactured water, which is abundant in Istanbul because there's significant potential for treated wastewater reuse and rainwater harvesting. At present, out of 1.4 billion cubic meter a year wastewater generated, 62% undergoes primary treatment, 38% undergoes biological and tertiary treatment prior to being discharged in the Bosphorus and the Marmara Sea. Only 1.84% was reused by the Istanbul Water and Sewerage Administration in 2019, corresponding to 25 million cubic meters a year. This was mainly for gardening purposes. To use this potential, an efficient sewerage network operation is needed. It's costly, we agree. The rehabilitated and extended sewerage infrastructure is designed as separate sanitary sewers and stormwater drains. In case the treated wastewater can be reused, which means that appropriate advanced treatment is ensured at wastewater treatment plants, it is expected that coastal water quality will improve due to the fact that sea outfalls will be minimized. You may know that Istanbul is now, the Marmara Sea is now facing another catastrophe, which means that Istanbul citizens are facing this. This is the mucilage outbreak experience in the Marmara Sea, which means that there is pressure on this sea, generated mainly from land-based pollution. Next slide, please. In this water-sensitive city approach, we need to shift from traditional regime to an integrated regime. The traditional regime calls for exclusively large-scale centralized infrastructure and institution, priority given to controlling environmental variation through technocratic engineering, whereas the integrated regime means integrated, distributed, and flexible infrastructure and institutions are required, and priority should be given to maintaining resilience through adaptability and reflexivity. In Istanbul, we need that, definitely. Next slide, please. So in a water-sensitive city, what should we do? Water quality of urban water courses is very important. In Istanbul, we keep rehabilitating creeks because clandestine and wastewater discharges are connected to creeks. On the other hand, we must accept that it's very difficult because it's an old city, hilly, old, having monuments, classified monuments, then we cannot touch easily and rehabilitate infrastructure, unfortunately. Legislation and planning is a key issue to clear all this issue. In a water-sensitive city, we must support growth, population, and economy, but how? We cannot stop population increase. We are not. It's not possible. But we may find other ways to find a solution. And in this city, in such cities, livability depends on the quality of life, which is a must. Next slide, please. Based on this, all the challenges met in Istanbul and all the proposals, maybe we can, maybe we cannot, but one thing is for sure that we need to change our minds and to look for a better management system, better understanding of the requirement. The significant changes in resource replenishment, which may be expected by natural and anthropogenic adverse impacts, can be identified as severe repeated droughts and extreme weather events, which is met in Istanbul as well. Anthropogenic impact on resource yield is caused mainly by urbanization to the detriment of forest areas. Because Istanbul, you can imagine, is very much attractive and land entrepreneurs, land promoters try to find places for that. changes in runoff patterns within water catchment basins in Istanbul and in the external basins supplying water to Istanbul due to natural and anthropogenic hazards is an issue, of course. Next slide, please. In this context, the prominent problems in terms of being more prepared and resilient in water resources management should be identified because our challenges are population migration, urbanization, climate change, financial and institutional infrastructure of local governments that need to be supported, to be helped, to be increased, and to be financed. Sustainable resource management should be ensured by adopting methods that will prevent potential water crises in the region. Water resource management approach should take demand management instead of supply management. It is necessary to hedge water supply portfolio with diversified resources against the risks which are expected to be generated by extreme events like drought. Integrated resource management and water sensitivity will be appropriate to apply demand management oriented approach, considering non-conventional water resources like treated wastewater reuse, grey water reuse for supplementary replacement, for supplementary or replacement purposes. Next slide, please. Okay, as last but not least concluding remarks, I would say that we have to skip from our dangerous behavior, which is the false perception of water availability induced by water transfer. This is a threat to water security because when we are facing a danger, a disaster, or shortage, or whatever, then we can realize the danger. But afterwards, we forget easily. Then we restart polluting the environment, wasting water, etc. It's human. We can understand that, but the environment doesn't respond to this human approach. Then we need to adopt a diversified water portfolio and adopt new behavioral attitudes and a changed mindset in the face of emerging issues. Next, for thanking all of you. Thank you for listening and hoping that you share my vision on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your valuable presentation, Professor. And thank you for stressing out really important issues to us. Okay, so our next guest is Professor Dr. MAHNAZ GÜMRÜKÇÜOğlu from Sakarya University, Turkey. Professor MAHNAZ.
Good morning.
Good morning, Professor. How are you?
Thank you. And you?
Thank you. We are all good as well.
Thank you, Dr. Alas. And I'm sharing my presentation. I'm sorry. And now, yes. I also shared, but I think there is a problem. I think. Can you see my presentation? No.
Yes, we can see your presentation, Professor.
Yes.
And I would appreciate if you can make it full screen.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I think I can't do it. I think sorry. I'm trying.
Yes, there's a button on the bottom right corner of your screen.
Yeah, I know.
In the folder.
I know, but when I change the full screen, now the old slides goes on. Why?
So therefore, I suggest
automatically change. The slides automatically change when the full screen. Sorry.
Okay, Professor, may I suggest instead of going for full screen, if you can choose the read view?
Yeah, and now when I could change. I could share, but now I can't. I don't know. No? Can you see this? No.
Yes, we can see it, Professor.
Oh, yeah. It's okay because the full screens, there's a problem, I think, in the full screens. Can I continue this like this?
Yes, of course, Professor.
Yeah.
We are ready when you are.
Okay, thank you, dear colleagues. Good morning, and many greetings from Sakarya, Turkey, and I would like to thank all the teams, all the team who are organizing this valuable congress. And thank you for your invitation as keynote speaker also. I would like to, I'm sorry for my voice, because I am a little bit ill. Yeah, I would like to start my introducing myself, and I am MAHNAZ YIİT, and I am climatologist and work in the Sakarya University Environmental Engineering Department as associate professor. In my presentation today, at the adaptation, change my. This is a technical problem, I think. Yes. In my presentation today, adaptation studies and activities to the effects of the climate change in the sectors of the agriculture, drinking, and utility water, and industry, which are priority of for the Turkey and especially for the Sakarya region. I talk about a general and local solution proposal for vulnerability to climate change and adaptation to risks. I selected especially Sakarya city because Sakarya is one of the 4 provinces determined as the priority area for Turkey's climate change adaptation strategy and action plan. The adaptation studies in here, the Sakarya's adaptation studies here will be show a way to other regions. And climate change is actually a multidimensional problem that requires the most radical prevention to be taken today. Over the past century, the global temperature has increased by average 1 degree, and it is predicted that there will be an increase of between 2.5 degree by the end of the century. The graph clearly shows that the increase in temperature between 1860 and 2020. Especially after 1950, this increase must be much faster due to human activities. Depending on this activity and the changing conditions, the heat waves in intensity and frequency have increased. Precipitation patterns have changed. Glaciers are melting. Of course, disasters such as storms, floods, forest fires, and increasing. And living species are decreasing also. It's predicted that this will continue to increase. Many factors affected to these conditions, such as agriculture, water resource, ecosystems, forestry, industry, urban infrastructure sectors are adversely affected. The next slide. Yeah. Yes. And you can see in figures of the future projection over the world of climate parameters change according to the scenarios. By the end of the century, temperature and precipitation changes are seen compared to the good scenarios RCP 4.5, and the worst scenarios RCP 8.5. It is clearly seen that there will be scenarios increase in temperature, especially in North Hemisphere, and a decrease in the precipitation, especially in region close to Ecuador. And when we narrow the oops, I'm sorry for this the slide screening. Yes, I'm trying to yeah. Oh yes, it's okay. And continue. And yes, when we narrow the field and look at the Mediterranean coast on a European scale, it's predicted that there will be an increase in temperature between 2 and 7 degrees in all Europe, and a decrease in the precipitation of up to -40 in the Mediterranean region. And what about river flows? As in the model outputs, this decrease in precipitation decreasing will also affect river flows. With the increase in the evaporation, stream flows will also decrease. Current decrease, which are between -10 and -25 on average, of course, but at some points in some points may reach -50%. This means, of course, that freshwater resources are relatively affected. And Turkey is located is the semi-arid climate zone, and and when we list the main risks related to water resources, lack of access, access to safe drinking water, and the resulting health effects, decreased agricultural productivity, and rural income loss because of the scarcity of irrigation water, loss of inland water ecosystems, decrease in biodiversity along with the ecosystem service, economic costs associated with floods and droughts, higher costs in the urban settlements and for industrial production. And when we look at the Turkey situation, Turkey is located in a semi-arid temperature climate zone, and the Mediterranean climate is effective in the wide area and very vulnerable because of the climate change. Turkey is one of the countries that will be adversely affected by climate change due to its geography and location. The graphs show temperature change projections according to the optimistic scenario RCP 4.5 and a worst case scenario RCP 8.5. According to these, temperature will continue to rise until the end of the century. It is predicted that it will reach 2 degrees according to the most optimistic scenarios. Most optimistic results and 6 degrees according to the most pessimistic scenario, in addition to the increase in evaporation. And until about precipitation, until the end of the century, an average 60 millimeter degrees expected in total precipitation amount compare the both RCP scenarios. According to the most pessimistic scenarios, a decrease in river flows and groundwater, an increase in evaporation will occur. It is expected to be in the form of heavy rainfall. Depending on these, stream flow rates increase and flood danger arises. In addition, groundwater recharge will also decrease. Because of the soil infiltration will decrease, and this will continue. In addition, the snowfall decreasing will rising the water stress in the summer period. The map above shows the precipitation distribution for the 2019 and 2020 water year for Turkey. The data in the table shows temporal variation according to the years in regions. According to this table, it is seen that the amount of the precipitation has decreased. For example, in the Asian region, there has been a 14.2% decrease in the precipitation in 2020. Compared to the average of the last 30 years, this is the region the most risk water resource and drought risk in high. In the Southeastern Anatolian region, there has been a decrease of 29% in 2020 compared to the previous year, especially in this region where the temperatures are very high during the warm period. The decrease in the precipitation means a serious water problem. On the back, the region with the most precipitation, with an annual rainfall of over 2,000 millimeter for Turkey is seen as the Black Sea in the northeast. Even this region, there is a minus 9% decrease in precipitation compared to the average for the 2071 and the 2010 period. This situation can create meteorological drought, which sets the stage for hydrological and agricultural drought. And drought, what about drought? On the map, the long-term drought situation of Turkey can be seen. The areas with high risk are the interior and the southern regions. The other map on the right shows the annual drought situation in 2020. Black and dark colors on the map indicate severe and very severe drought. And much of the area, the duration of the dry periods is getting longer and frequent. And the next slide, we can use water usage amount of Turkey. Considering the current water resources, Turkey is not a water-rich country. Annual usable water per capita is 1,340 cubic meter, as you see in table. Turkey's water exploitation index is approximately 26% for 2018 years. According to this ratio, Turkey is in the position of the country experiencing water stress. In addition to the effects of the climate change, there is a risk of becoming a water poor country in the future with population growth year and 2030. Based for the 100 million population. Estimated per capita amount of the water is 1,120 cubic meter a year, as you see in the figure. According to the TÜİK, Turkish Statistical Institute's projections, the amounts of the consumable water per capita will decrease to 1,069 cubic meter a year in near future in 2050. And when we look at the sectoral water use of Turkey, and 74% of the usage belongs to the agricultural irrigation, the rates is less than developing countries. However, when compared to developed countries, it is seen that the rate of the water use for agricultural irrigation is quite high. For developing countries, industrial use is 59%. This ratio in Turkey, the 11%. This is due to the fact that agricultural production in Turkey is higher than the developed countries, as well as the lack of the water savings in irrigation methods. Since surface irrigation methods are used in approximately 70% of irrigation, the rate of the water loss in between 35 and 60%. Considering these rates, it is seen that the saving to be realized by the application of the appropriate methods in agricultural irrigation is very important in terms of the sustainability of water resource. And next. And this is the Central Anatolia region. The Konya Coast Basin is one of the worst results of the using excess water in the agricultural irrigation area. The region is important or very important agricultural area for Turkey. But it is also poor region in terms of the surface water. Therefore, the water used for irrigation is a large amount of the groundwater. Before the decade, were planted grain, which need less irrigation. But today, since the last 10 or 15 years, 10 or 15 years, have been planted different plants such as corn, which is require a lot of water. There are approximately 100,000 irrigation wells over the basin. You can see this map. This red area show that the wells, and approximately 100,000 irrigation wells over the basin. Since the aquifers began to drain, approximately 600 sinkholes were formed by the substance. You can see the photos, one of them, and considering the groundwater supply, which will decrease further with climate change, studies are carried out to take urgent measures. For example, research is being carried out of the switch to alternative product patterns that require less water. As a result of this, it has been observed that when grain cultivation is increased by average 10%, there will be a 10% decrease in the irrigation water requirement per hectare. Therefore, it has been observed that water use will decrease significantly with the transition to climate usable suitable product patterns. Determining the product patterns suitable for the future climate conditions will be one of the best steps. It seems that. And Sakarya, when we look at the province of Sakarya, it is one of the areas with the most fertile agricultural land in the northeast of Turkey. It has a climate between a Mediterranean climate and temperature climate. Recently in the region, the industrialization has been developing rapidly, but agriculture is still most important sector. The graphs show the average temperature and total precipitation change over the past 50 years and the expected change in temperature and precipitation by end of the century, as you see in graphics. According to climate change scenarios, and increased approximately 2 degrees in temperature and average of the 2% decrease in the precipitation. And when we look at the sectoral usage rates, as you see in graphics, 80% of the water is used for irrigation, 12% for domestic use, and 8% for industrial use. Agriculture is an important sector in Sakarya, as I mentioned before. Therefore, the rate of agricultural irrigation in water use is very high. There are many industrial facilities produced in the different areas in province. Therefore, industrial water using getting increased day by day. And these graphics show that sectoral water consumption rates in Sakarya province according to the results of the climate change sectoral affectability analysis. According to these results, the most affected sector are agriculture, water management, ecosystem service, public health, energy, industry, and urban infrastructure. Agriculture 46% being the most affected sector, and water resources 42% being the second most affected sector, as you see in graphics. When we look at the amount of the water per capita in Sakarya Basin, it is between 1,000 and 1,700 cubic meter, as seen on the map. Considering the population growth and climate change, it seems inevitable to experience water stress in the basin in the near future. The most important risk to be created by climate change in Sakarya, drought, floods, and severe weather events. By considering these rates, made a drought analysis that's shown in the graph in the 69 years analysis period between 1951 and 2021, determined total 20 years as dry years. Now, adaptation strategies for climate change. Adaptation to climate change is the prevention and actions for activities for society and ecosystem to cope with changing climate conditions. In order to cope with future climate change, it is necessary to adapt appropriate technologies and support them with non-technological application. In order to take effective functional adaptation prevention, decision makers, institutions, and non-governmental organizations should integrate climate change in their planning and budget calculations. We can look at adaptation prevention under three headings. Sectoral adaptation, it means includes the individual sector that may be affected by climate change, developing technologies that use less water for irrigation or other consumption. The second one, multi-sectoral adaptation, is about natural resources management, like water management. And third one, cross-sectoral adaptation preventions involve some sectors, for example, economic diversifications or disaster management. And also, for example, priorities for adaptation in climate change for Sakarya. First of all, green conservation, protecting water resources using sectoral measures, cooperation of institutions, raising awarenesses, providing training. This is the results of the analysis, of the effective analysis. And agriculture, climate change adaptation activities for the agricultural sectors. Technical adaptation is the first, because the agriculture is the first sector that will be most affected by water scarcity in Turkey. Technical applications, creating product patterns that require less water and are more resistant to disease. And using low-loss irrigation systems such as drip irrigation or sprinkler methods, and also closed system for irrigation channels. Installing rain harvesting systems, and it's very important, really, rain harvesting system for all consumption, but mainly the agriculture. Changing planting and harvesting time should be implemented. And those were the technical application, but also this technical application should be supported by different activities. These non-technical practice. The first of all, promoting new production methods, and the new many new products suitable for the climate change conditions, providing alternative jobs, conducting disaster risk management, analyzing the economic viability of agricultural policy under the different climate scenarios, creating incentive program for alternative crop cultivation, and of course training for farmers. It's very important. And drinking and using water sectors, the climate change adaptation activities. The technical and non-technical adaptation activities, reducing, first of all, overconsumption and the high loss rates in cities, the increase of water consumption and pressure on water resource. When we list this prevention for the adaptation for drinking and utility water, first, reducing loss in water conveyance and the distribution networks, and using greywater for domestic and or industrial purposes. Actually, it's today it seems to be costly, but it used first in industrial use and then domestic consumption, but it should be started very urgently. And harvesting rainwater, that's important for all consumption. Using treated wastewater for agricultural purposes, promoting technical equipment that saves water, and managing sustainable groundwater resource. And climate change for industry, climate change adaptation activities in industrial sectors, and climate change has many possible effects on industry. This affects in this efficiency of the production process, cost of operation in maintenance activities, infrastructure, electricity, and water services, raw material and service supply, change in customer demand, and energy due to water scarcity. And Sakarya also is there are getting in this industry become an industrial city, and also developing terms of industry. There are 8 organized industrial zones, and 3 are active, and 8 small industrial cities and many industrial facilities in the province. General groundwater is used in the all industrial facilities. The decrease in the industrial production due to water scarcity that may occur due to the climate change may affect the production of the country. For the industrial sector, it's important to take vulnerability and risk analysis, determine and implement complex activities. Managing in plant water, reusing grey water and wastewater, and collecting rainwater. The protection of the facilities against heavy precipitation and floods. Determine the alternative energy required by climate change, preferring clean production technologies. It is maybe it's the best word, preferring clean production. And yes, this is the last word. Reducing the impact of climate change on water resource is absolutely necessary to increase the durability of economies and ecosystems. Under the effects of the changing climate, reducing consumption by sustainable water management should be a country first priority, and it should be applied at the regional and even at the basin level. Adaptation studies will support countries in improving water security and thus adapting to climate change and reducing disaster risk by the water resource management. And now finish my presentation. Thank you for listening and attention and your time. Yeah, if any question, I'm glad to answer.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Mahnaz Gümrükçüoğlu Yiğit.
Thank you.
From Sakarya University, Turkey.
Thank you very much.
Our next guest is Professor Senem Teksoy Başaran from Medeniyet University, Turkey. But she's unable to be with us today. She has delivered a pre-recorded video of her presentation to us. But unfortunately, the time is running out in this session. Therefore, I would like to share her video in the next session. And now, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Ali Cemal Gücü from Middle East Technical University, Turkey, to deliver his presentation.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Professor. I think Professor Gücü is having connection problems. So let us wait for him. Hello, Professor Gücü.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Professor.
Good. Now I'm sharing my screen. I hope you see it. Can you? Can you see my screen?
Not yet, Professor.
Maybe it's better if you share it, because I'm doing my best to.
Yes, of course, Professor. I have your presentation ready. So if you would like, I'll share your slides.
Let me give another try. And
of course,
how about
sure.
now? Can you see it?
No, Professor, we cannot.
Can you see? Okay. Then I'll ask you to help me. Okay, I'm done. I mean, it doesn't work. Okay.
Professor, can you see your slides?
No.
Currently at the first page of your slides.
No, I cannot see it. Well, if everybody sees my presentation.
Yes,
now
we can all see your presentation.
Okay, that's good. Now, well, my name is Ali Cemal Gücü. I work for Middle East Technical University. I'm a professor there. And today I'll present to you some issues related to sustainable exploitation of marine living resources in the Northeastern Mediterranean. Can you move to the second one, please? Okay, just a short note before I start. Probably, as you may know, Mediterranean Sea has experienced drastic changes over its history. First, started as a big tropical ocean, and then it experienced a long period of dry off. Then it was totally dried and turned into a desert, salty desert. And then it was reconnected with the Atlantic Ocean some 5.5 million years ago, million years ago, and now it turned into the Mediterranean that we see today after this connection. This event has significant impacts on its ecosystem. Can we go to the second slide, please? During the period of desiccation, all the marine flora and fauna was lost, and the biota was reborn after the Atlantic connection. And if you compare the two ends of the Atlantic Ocean, can you click on the slide, please? So in the Atlantic Ocean, in the connection where we have the Atlantic connection of the Mediterranean Sea, the average temperature is about 20. Our average summer temperature is 21 degrees. But if you come to the other opposite end, to the northeastern Mediterranean, there the temperature is 30 degrees. There's 2 degrees of difference between two ends of the Mediterranean Sea. So this is quite a big gradient for marine organisms. Can you click again? And therefore, we see only half of the marine organisms that we observe in the western part of the Mediterranean Sea. And the reason is just because of the temperature. Temperature in the east is too high for the majority of the species coming from the Atlantic Ocean. This was the case until very recently, because can you go to the next slide, please? Because at the end of the 18th century, one brilliant French engineer came up with an idea, and he proposed to connect Mediterranean Sea with the Indian Ocean to shorten the maritime trade routes, and so that the so-called Suez Channel was built, and so that the Red Sea was connected with the Mediterranean Sea. And that is reported as one of the most significant intervention of the mankind ever made on the world oceans, because so that several marine organisms, I mean thousands of marine organisms actually, were able to cross the strait, cross the channel, and established in the Mediterranean Sea. Can we go to the second slide? Next slide, please. And now imagine, on the one, we are in an area where the marine organisms are not in favor of the climate because it's too warm for them. They're mostly cold affiliated, temporal affiliated species. And there's a new gate opened for the tropical species which are in favor of warm water. So needless to say, the newcomers are very successful in the eastern part of the Mediterranean. Next slide, please. Next, please. Next, please. So in the area as the Middle East Technical University, we are conducting several research activities since 1980s. And on the screen, you can see the expansion route of the Sepsian species. The Sepsian migration is the migration which is called after the French engineer Ferdinand de Lesseps, and it describes the passage of the newcomers in the Mediterranean Sea. And the Sepsian species are named for the species that are coming from the Red Sea into the Mediterranean. So on the screen, you see their expansion route, and they first come to the north, following driven by the main circulation in the Eastern Mediterranean, and they follow the coast and they expand towards west, from east to west. Next slide, please. So as I said, we do several work in the area since 80s, and on the screen you can see one of the earlier work. And this table, this graph represents you the distribution of the Sepsian species in the area. On the x-axis, you see the location of the stations where we conducted the survey. we counted the fish. We took some fish samples and see the composition. On the y-axis, you see the time domain, and it starts from it starts from May 1980 and goes to 82 November. And the first thing that you can see on this map is, well, they are everywhere, and the circles represents the percentage of the Sepsian species in the total catch in weight. So they are almost everywhere in the same quantities. Can you click on the presentation, please? And what may drew your attention is the station in the middle. So this was this was against our expectation, and this was against the expansion pattern of these species in the area, and evidently at this station there is something that blocks or that inhabits the success of the new species. As you see, the circles are smaller than the rest of the figure. Next slide, please. So this is a new question. I mean, this is still a big question for us, and we're trying to answer it. But we have some clues to explain it. And on the graph, you can see the fishing pressure, and this is the number of fishing vessels that we recorded when we were doing our samples in 80s. So in a way that represents the fishing pressure in the area at the stations. As you can see, at the point where we see the least amount of Sepsian migration, Sepsian immigrants, the fishing pressure is the highest. So this is one of the clues indicating that the fishery has something to do with the success of this Sepsian species. Next slide, please. Now, at the end of the 90s, please click on the slide. And we did the same work all around the basin. And what surprises us most was that these kind of organisms, marine organisms, were almost absent around the Cyprus Island. As you can see from the figure, they were represented with very low percentages. And click again, please. In the easternmost part, we were again surprised by seeing some small pelagic planktivoric plankton-eating fish, because like anchovies, sardines, and horse mackerel, these were not the kind of species that we used to see in this area in great quantities. Next, please. And in the central part, near to Mersin City, Mersin City is on the north, where the slide is. So the situation is even more striking, because almost 75% of the fish that we sampled were formed by the plankton-eating small pelagic fishes. Next, please. So this was well, actually not very surprising, because this was the period where the coastal urbanization, as you can see on the figure, on the photographs, was very fast, accelerated, and the human population migrated to the south coast of Turkey, particularly from eastern part of Turkey, and they settled there. And unfortunately, all these buildings created a lot of wastewater, and mostly they were drained into the Mediterranean, coastal part of the Mediterranean, without treatment. So the wastewater is actually good for the ecosystems like Mediterranean Sea, where nutrients are poor, but excess amount of nutrients is a problem, what we call eutrophication. Next slide, please. So what happens is that they are plants. I mean, the planktons utilizes the nutrients, the fertilizers, the wastewaters, and they grow suddenly, and they attain to great biomass values. So this is, please click on the slide. And the overgrowth of phytoplanktons are kind of planktons that are able to photosynthesize. And they grow, if they grow very fast, and if they attain to huge biomass values, they block the sunlight, solar radiation, and they block it and prevent penetration of the sunlight to the deeper waters. The next slide, please. And what happens is that, click again, please. First, the color of the sea changes as it's seen on the photograph to grayish green and brownish green. And the impact is not only in the change of the color, but also in the ecosystem. Next slide, please. In the Mediterranean, we have two-armed food webs. So one arm is the organisms living in the water column. In this case, solar radiation, the energy taken from the solar radiation is transferred into organic material through the phytoplanktonic organisms, and they are utilized by zooplanktons, as you can see on the figure. And the zooplanktons are eaten by plankton-eating fish like sardines and anchovies, and the food web continues by the piscivorous fish-eating fish. Another arm goes into the deeper part, to the bottom of the sea, where the sea grass and seaweeds and sea algae utilizes as energy and photosynthesis, use photosynthetic activities, and they facilitate growth at the bottom, so that we have clams, mussels, kind of individuals on the bottom. And these are harvested and consumed by bottom fish like red mullet, hake, and sole. These are very common individuals in the Mediterranean, and the food chain continues like this. Please click on the slide. And if eutrophication happens, and if the light penetration is blocked by the phytoplanktons living in the water column, then the bottom organisms, bottom plants cannot photosynthesize, and they cannot produce organic material, and this influences the benthic organisms, bottom living creatures, and the deep water fish, bottom living fish cannot feed anymore. So this is and then what happens? Please click twice. And then what happens if the energy is accumulated at the surface? Then all the energy is diverted to the water column, to the second arm, the upper arm of the food web, and excess amount of phytoplankton growth is utilized by zooplanktons. And can you click on the slide twice or three times? And finally, the phytoplankton eating or zooplankton eating, plankton eating fish gets higher in quantities, abundance, and biomass. Can you click again? Because the carrying capacity of the environment increases due to eutrophication. So no matter how good you manage your stocks, your fishery, there will always be a decline in the bottom living organisms, particularly in the fish stocks. So this is one of the main, one of the problems that we face in the Mediterranean ecosystem. Can you go to the next slide, please? Next, please. Next, please. Yes, that's another study. This was conducted in the mid-80s. And on the figure, you can see, again, the percentage of the Sepsian species on the total catch. On the east, as you recognize, the circles are quite large. And almost at some certain stations, the total sample were made of the Sepsian species. In the central part, where we have the heaviest fishing activities, the numbers are less. But when you come to, can you click on the slide, please? When you come to the westernmost part of the area, then you can see that all of a sudden they disappeared. All the Sepsian species in the area disappears, and they were not recorded at the stations located on the western part of the survey study area. So let's keep this figure in mind, and let's move to the second one. Next one, please. Now that's the CPUE, catch per unit effort values that we recorded during the survey. Catch per unit effort is actually the number of quantity of fish caught in a unit of time, usually 1 hour. And this was around 40-45 kilograms around in the early 80s. This is a quite reasonable number for the Mediterranean. Can you click on the slide, please, again? And few years later, again, please, almost 5 years later, we have recorded a drastic decline in the catch per unit effort. So that means the stocks are being depleted. And this was not surprising. Let's click on the slide, please, again. And let's move to the next slide, please. Yes, this was not surprising because in the same area, this was a western part of the basin, 3 large fishing ports were built. And before the construction of these fishing ports, the fishery were characterized by small-scale fishers. These were operating small boats and small nets. And after the construction of these ports, the character of the fishery has changed from small-scale to industrial fishers. And they started to operate large vessels like the one shown on the screen. And on the left-hand side, you can see how fast the fishing fleet has grown after the construction of these fishing ports. And then evidently, the fishery has had an impact on the stock, various fishing stocks. Next slide, please. So this was well, quite understandable because on the eastern side of the basin, continental shelf is very broad. You can see the border of the continental shelf. There, the main fishing activities takes place. The western half, however, the continental shelf is very, very narrow. Continental shelf is actually where the main fishing activities takes place. And this part, the western part of the basin, where we have the new ports and the growth of the fishing fleet took place, was very, very little. I mean, the fishing grounds were not large enough to sustain such a big growth in the fishing fleet. Next, please. And of course, we reported this situation to the fishing authorities in Turkey, and we asked them to stop fishery in this area because overfishing problem, but unfortunately nothing has been done due to very heavy pressure by the fishermen. But luckily, in the same area, we have found Mediterranean monk seal. So the Mediterranean monk seal is critically endangered marine mammal, and they are under protection by international laws, and which were ratified by Turkey. So we used this opportunity and proposed the same conservation measure to the Ministry of Environment. And we said, look, these species are endangered, so we have to protect them because we ratified the international conventions, and they are feeding on fish, and the area is overfished. There's not much fish for them to eat, so they are starving. So if you want to protect these species, these marine mammals, you have to help the ecosystem to recover. You have to help the fishing stocks to recover. And thanks to the Ministry of Agriculture, our proposal is accepted. Next slide, please. And a quite large area was set aside for the protection of the Mediterranean monk seals. In the area where you can see on the screen on the right-hand side is protected against industrial fishery. Next slide, please. So since then, this was in 1999. The protection was established in 1999, and afterwards we monitored the area to see the recovery of the fishing stocks, fish stocks, and the ecosystem. Next slide, please. And to our surprise, the results were not the one we were expecting. So on the right-hand side, you see the number of Sepsian species recorded over the study period, and as you can see that it's almost linear. And can you click on the slide, please? And the increase rate is like 1.2. So we receive 1 new species, the Sepsian species, every year on average. And when I compare this value with the neighboring area where fishing activity takes place and is normally, and can you click again? And there, the rate was 1.7 species per year, 1.7 Sepsian species per year. So this tells us that there's a slight increase in the numbers. This tells us that under the protection, the protection somehow stops entry or slows down the entry of new species in the area. But when I compare the biomass inside and outside of the protected area, fisheries restricted area, in the restricted area, the biomass increase almost constantly. And so we expect that if I calculate the trends, and I can tell you that in year 2066, there will be no native Mediterranean species will be left, and all will be Lesepsian. Whereas in the areas where fishing activities goes on, the biomass of the Lesepsian species reaches to a plateau and not exceeded that plateau anymore. So here we see that, again, fishery has an impact on the success of Lesepsian species in the Eastern Mediterranean, at least. Next slide, please. So another important issue, another important feature of the Eastern Mediterranean is this species. This plant that you see on the screen is called Positonia oceanica, or Neptune's grass. It's a very, very important species it's an endemic species for the Mediterranean, and it's very, very important for the Mediterranean ecosystem. As you can see on the screen, it occupies almost the entire coastline, and the only exception is the easternmost part of the Mediterranean Sea. On Cyprus, around the Cyprus island, you can see that there is the green line, and the meadow is extremely healthy, probably one of the most healthiest meadows occurring around the Cyprus island. So we did some work to understand why these species do not exist in the eastern half. Next slide, please. And here in the circle, they're absent. And as a part of this research, we mapped the distribution of the species in the area. This is the northern part of Cyprus. Next slide, please. So, and we found the border is somewhere right there. On the western part of the arrow, we could find very healthy meadows. But on the east, we were not able to see even a leaf or a shoot of this plant. Next slide, please. Next, please. So this was not the case. And in another study, which was published in 1991, but the experiment was done, the research was done in 1979, in an area which was covered by a Positonia meadow. Next slide, please. Was monitored during this research that we carried out, and we were not able to find any shoot, any leaf of the species. So apparently, next slide, please. Apparently, there was the species is in regression, and it is regressing back towards west. So next slide, please. And remember this figure, this was the Lesepsian distribution, and on the western part of the study area, the Lesepsian fishes were almost totally absent. When I superimpose this figure with the distribution of the Positonia meadow, click on the slide, please, and we see that in the area where the Lesepsian fishes disappear is the area where we have the Positonia meadows. So this figure clearly indicates that Positonia meadows is a protector of the Mediterranean Sea against the newcomers from the Sepsian, from the Red Sea. Next slide, please. This was quite understandable because Positonia meadows, or the seagrass meadows, are known to mature the ecosystems in which they inhabit. They strengthen the links between various ecosystem components, and so that they increase the resilience of the ecosystem against external perturbations like the new species or exotic species. Next slide, please. Next, please. Can you move to the next slide, please? On top of that, we have, can you go back to, I think we will go back. Can you go back? Anyway, as a part of this research, we tried to transplant some plants, some shoots from the areas where they naturally occur to the areas where they don't exist. So we did some transplantation experiments, as you will see on this figure. And also we deployed some temperature loggers. Move up, please. Move up. Well, yeah. One more, please. Yes, yes. So this plant, like the other plants on the terrestrial ecosystems, they photosynthesize, and during this photosynthesis, they produce organic material during the light when the sunlight is available, and then at night, when light is not available, they start to consume part of the energy, part of the materials they produce during the day, and the temperature has a catalytic effect on both, on the photosynthesis and also in the respiration. But the rate of respiration increases exponentially when they exposed to warm excess temperatures compared to the photosynthesis. When the respiration exceeds the photosynthesis, then the plant starts to die. So this is what happened in the area. Can you go to the next slide, please? And in the area where we transplanted this plant, they survived for 4 years, and then they eventually died. So I'll tell you why that happened later on. Next slide, please. Yes, on top of the issues I just mentioned, there's the climate change problem in the Mediterranean, as you have seen in the previous presenter's slide. The Earth is getting warmer and warmer. Next, click on the slide, please. And Mediterranean Sea and the Mediterranean region is warming faster than the rest of the world. So it's almost 20% faster warming is occurring in the Mediterranean Sea. So next slide, please. So to sum up, we have the climate change problem. Next, please. And this is very much linked to the Sepsian pressure, because as the temperature in the area is increasing, that gives more opportunity for the newcomers, which are warm affiliated and in favor of warm waters. Next, please. And next, please. And we are losing the protectors of the Mediterranean Sea, namely Positonia oceanica. And we have the eutrophication problem, and we believe that climate change and global warming has a catalytic effect also on the eutrophication problems. And next, please. And we have the eutrophication problem because of the very fast growth of the fishing fleet. Next, please. Now, if we understand these mechanisms and how they function in the ecosystem, and find out what controls the ecosystem, then can we come up with a solution to prevent, maybe prevention is not possible, but at least slow down these changes, or best turn this into the favor of the coastal communities living around the Mediterranean Sea? So to my opinion, the answer is yes. And then now I will try to explain you why I think positive. Next slide, please. So in this figure, you see one of the most important native Mediterranean fish. This is red mullet, one of the most tasteful fish in the Mediterranean Sea. And on the graph, you can see the vertical distribution. On the y-axis, you see the depths. On the x-axis, you see the months. So how their vertical distribution changes over time. So you see in winter, they're almost randomly distributed. In summer, just before the summer, they start to spawn. And after spawning, they go deeper and they empty the surface waters. So can you go to the next slide, please? And that's again, please. So again, this is another species. This is a Sepsian species. This is one of the most problematic species in the Mediterranean Sea. So their vertical distribution or bathymetrical distribution is just the opposite. They occupy shallow waters during the period when the Mediterranean fishes and they abandon the surface waters, shallower waters. Next slide, please. So does it mean that the next, please, the Mediterranean species run away and their place is occupied by the Sepsian species? The answer is no. The answer is actually the temperature in the area. So on the graph, you see the vertical profiles of temperature, and this is depth and this is time. And the color of the graph represents the temperatures. So again, in winter, almost all water column is mixed up. And in summer, there's the surface water starts to cool, to warm up, and a thermocline occurs. And in summer, there's a huge gradient between deep water and the surface water. Next, please. And this part of the is too warm for the Mediterranean species. That's why they move away. And this is, next please. This is very similar to the behavior of the local people around the Mediterranean, in this part of the Mediterranean. And like in Turkey, nomads live on the coastal areas during winter. When it gets too warm for them, they migrate up into the highlands. So this is very typical behavior of the people as well as the native species in the area. Next slide, please. So this part, we call it a thermal ecological window in which the Sepsian species perform all their biological activities. Next slide, please. So the one I showed you was the average of the entire data sets. And here you can see how it changes over time. And next, please. We have seen that the changes is in the onset when it starts, when the warming starts in the surface waters. Next, please. The duration of this period, of this ecological window, and its depth. Next, please. Because in the maximum, there's not much change, but the main changes are in the onset and its duration and on its depth, the maximum depth the warm water can reach. Next, please. So if you remember, our transplantation, Positonia transplantation could survive for 3 years, and then they disappeared due to this thermal window in a year when the warm water could reach to deeper layers, and it lasted longest in our data set. So climate change has an impact, a negative impact on the Positonia meadows, and this is the reason why they regressed back to the western part of the Mediterranean. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, the climate and especially the global warming process is working against native species of the Mediterranean Sea. And as the thermal window that I explained earlier widens, deepens, and also depending on its onset, its impact on the native species increases, while immigrants, the Sepsian species, take advantage of this opportunity to increase and expand their existence in the Mediterranean Sea. Next slide, please. So if we go back to the question I asked earlier, this situation is unstoppable. I mean, the Mediterranean will keep on warming, and we cannot stop it, unfortunately. But on the other hand, there's another factor which has an effect on the ecosystem, which is fishery. And as you remember, we have some clues to suggest that the fishery has some controls on the alien and exotic species, the Sepsian species, and maybe it's possible to use this opportunity to control the Sepsian migration and the Sepsian invasion in the Mediterranean Sea. Next slide, please. We have also seen some more evidences. For instance, some species like red mallets, this is the one on the right-hand side, they can cope with the problems associated with the Sepsian pressure, while some others, like the gurnard that you see on the left-hand side, they cannot. And when we compare the biology of these species, we have seen that the winners, like the red mullet, red Mullus barbatus, they complete their biological requirement, like reproduction, before the fishery ban. Next, please. Before the fishing ban starts. So so their recruitment, the new generation, recruits to the stock during the fishery ban, out of the fishing season. So they are protected by the fisheries measurements, fisheries regulations applied in the area. Whereas the other species, Gornard, they start spawning well before the fishing season, and they are not well protected by the fishery regulation. So this is another evidence that we can use to support our proposal. Next slide, please. So coming back to the question, maybe we can we use our fishing fleet that I tried to explain you earlier as a weapon against climate change and impact of climate change on the ecosystem, with some appropriate fishing regulations, namely by directing the fleet into the right place at the right time and taking into account the ecological thermal window that I explained you earlier. Next slide, please. So our suggestion out of this work is to use to do more research on the impact of fisheries on the ecosystem and its impact on the ecosystem, and use it as a measure to protect the Mediterranean against climate change. Next slide, please. So before I finish, I'd like to acknowledge the following institutions which helped us a lot by funding. And that's all. And I hope this was not very, very boring. Thank you very much. That's the end of my talk.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Ali Cemal Gücü, for the valuable presentation. This was the last presentation in the first session, and the second session will start shortly. Thank you for being with us, and hope to seeing you in the next session. Goodbye.
Catching a bus, never feeling straight.